Hey everyone. So I'm just jumping on real quick to do a solar eclipse video on June 10th is when we're going to have the next solar eclipse. And it's going to be in Taurus. Tropical mainstream astrology is probably telling you in Gemini, but it's actually in Taurus. So this is true sidereal astrology. This is astrology that aligns with the actual constellations in the sky. And the reason why the two zodiacs are off, it's because there's another mechanism, a movement in the sky called precession of the equinox. And most of you have already heard of the precession of the equinox. That's when we shift through the zodiac 1 degree every 72 years. Um, and that's what creates the movement of the great year. And that's the great clock. And this is how the ancients did astrology. They mapped out, they knew the movement of precession. So we knew our movement through the ages, the rise and the fall, the yugas. But I'm not going to spend too much time in this video going over um, tropical and sidereal, but you can look that up yourself and you'll see what I'm telling you is true. So this year we're going to have a total of 4 eclipses. We already had one for the lunar eclipse. That was actually in the constellation of Scorpio. And I know mainstream astrology put that in the constellation of Sagittarius. But if you know your constellations, you know how to stargaze, you'll look up in the sky, it's in Scorpio. It was in Scorpio. That's why it was really intense. We had a lot of people felt it coming up to the date and also past the date. And that was on May 26th. I didn't get a chance to do a video on that. So I'm going to go over a few things with you. First, I'm going to explain what an eclipse is, because a lot of people don't even know what an eclipse is. So I'm just going to give a little demonstration on lunar eclipse and solar eclipse. I'm going to use my 2 bronze balls to show you. Well, real balls, not my balls, but these balls. All right. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to do a few things. I want to show you something called the Alias Effect. It was with the pendulum, and during the eclipse, the pendulum swung counterclockwise, which if you look into ancient cosmology, you're going to see that um, the ancients would weave in counterclockwise. They would weave blankets and placemats counterclockwise to create disharmony, to create to effect the enemy. So you can look that up yourself too. There's always this like weaving grandmother, creator, mother spider, and she's the weaver that weaves matter into creation, which also relates to Virgo. But you can kind of go on that rabbit hole on your own. I want to really focus on this eclipse. But I'm going to show you this pendulum, and we're going to look at it, why it goes counterclockwise, and I'm going to kind of like figure out how that's going to equate to an eclipse reading. And then I'm just going to walk you around the chart and show you a few things and kind of like figure out what to look out for. So we're going to have 4 eclipses, right? We already had 1, and we have 3 more coming for the whole year. It began with the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, and it ends on December 4th with the solar eclipse in Scorpio. So that's something really important to pay attention to. I'm only going to do the eclipse, the solar eclipse coming up for June 10th now, and leading up to the other ones, I'll do one per eclipse. So, all right. So first, let me explain what makes an eclipse. It's we've heard of the lunar nodes, right? Rahu, Ketu, and I'm going to point that out to you in the chart as well. But what the nodes are is, okay, let's imagine this is the moon and this is the sun. And the sun travels the ecliptic. The ecliptic is also known as the zodiac belt, and that's that band that's about 19 degrees wide. And it goes in an angle like, I think it's 20, we're tilted at 23 degrees. But the moon doesn't travel the same. So the sun and the planets travel on what's called the ecliptic. That's where you get the zodiac, right? And that's why astrology works, because the influence of the zodiac belt is influencing the planets and the sun. And that comes to Earth, right? So it moves, let's say, this way, right? So create an imaginary line as I move this, right? That imaginary line. The moon travels at a 5-degree difference. So it doesn't travel the same line like this. Like all the planets and the sun travel like this. The moon is 5 degrees off. So what happens is that imaginary line, it goes like this for the ecliptic. The moon's line It's 5 degrees difference. Where those two lines meet, those two imaginary lines meet, that's called a node. So the solar system line, the sun line, and the moon line are different, right? They're going like this, right? And that's a node. So what happens is when the sun and the moon, like a new moon, that's where you get a solar eclipse. So when the sun and the moon are exactly conjunct where the nodes are, where they meet, and then there's a conjunction, which happens every 18 and that, what is it, 18 and a half months, I think we get an eclipse. But anyway, the nodes move one sign 18 and a half. I might be confusing things a little bit right now, so let me just stay on course. So that is where the eclipse happens, when they meet, right? So that's a lunar eclipse. So a new moon is when the sun and the moon are conjunct. And then when they're conjunct with a node, that means when they're conjunct and their lines of path, the path lines meet that X, then they're conjunct with the X. That's an eclipse. And that's when the moon blocks out the sun. That's a new moon, comes in front of the sun and blocks it out. Now there's another rabbit hole you can go on. Ask yourself the question and research it. How is it possible that the moon can block out the sun? That's because the sun is 400 times further away from Earth than the moon. And it's also 400 times bigger. Or the moon is 400 times smaller, which makes the moon and the sun appear the same size because of the distance and the size. Now, if you look into it, there's a book called Who Built the Moon? There's another book called Spaceship Moon. A lot of people make a good case for saying no other planet in the solar system has a moon with the same exact placement that could actually block out the sun and the same distance and all of that stuff. So that's another rabbit hole, but that's not what we're going to get into now. But look, you can look that up. And the moon is also, the diameter of the moon is 2,160 miles, which is the size, the average size of a zodiac, an age. 2160 times 12, 25,920. That's also the amount of breaths we take a year, a day, 25,920. So yeah, you can kind of like look that up. So, all right. But in any case, so that's new moon. Now that's what's called a solar eclipse because the moon blocks out the sun. But now the other way, when you have a full moon, that's when the sun is opposing the moon. That's how you get a full moon, and that happens also with the nodes. But the Earth comes in between. So the sun and the moon are opposite each other. Earth is in between. So then the Earth blocks out solar light to the moon, which is why you have a shadow on the moon. Okay, that's the full moon lunar eclipse, and that's what we had in Scorpio last month on May 26th, right? So that's an eclipse. So I hope that I explained that pretty good for you using these bronze balls. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to get my screen share set up, and I'm going to walk us through a few things that I want to show you about this coming eclipse. Okay, so hang on a second. Okay, so I just pulled this up. This is called, and you can kind of like, again, go down your rabbit hole. This is called, I'm going to draw here. Hang on a second. I draw in white. This is called the Alias Effect. You can look that up. It's what's his name? Here's his name, Maurice Alias. So he noticed during the solar eclipse, there was a big pendulum that swings with the rotation of the Earth. And you can see here, during the course of a normal day, the swing direction appears to rotate clockwise, right? And you can see here, so it's swinging and it's going like this, right? And it's drawing a pattern clockwise. Okay. Now, so that's normal, and it shows the sun right here. Right? It's a normal day. And then you see 1, 2, 3. So it's going in this way clockwise. At the start of the solar eclipse right here, you could read that. The swing direction begins to rotate rapidly anti-clockwise. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's going this way now. So the swing is going like this instead of the other way, clockwise, right? So, and then it reads again, after the eclipse, there's a return to normal as the direction of the rotation resumes its slow change clockwise. So then it starts to click back and it starts to go clockwise. All right. So this is the effect of an eclipse on a living organism on Earth, right? This is, so you're feeling the energy that you normally are operating with. You're feeling that energy backwards, or you're feeling what I believe it's the absence of the energy. So, because if you look at it, if you think about it, if you just look at it with the logical point of view, what is an eclipse? Okay, you have literally the sun and the moon, the solar eclipse. The moon blocks out solar energy to our planet, right? And that interacts with our Earth's electromagnetic field. That Earth's electromagnetic field interacts with the living beings on Earth. And if you another rabbit hole you can go down, because I studied a lot of cosmology and I also studied a lot of how does astrology work. And we do have magnetite crystals in our brain. So we're interacting with the magnetic field of Earth. Earth is dealing with the sun. Sun is dealing with the planets. So when that gets interrupted, we get interrupted. And that goes counterclockwise. See the motion of that pendulum, the energy is moving it counterclockwise. So that's something to pay attention to. Counterclockwise is out of harmony. Harmony is clockwise. That's the way. If I draw here for you, that's the motion of the planets. The planets rise. This is the east right here. Let's see. Sorry, this is the east. So the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. This is the west right here. Okay, so that's the normal motion. That normal motion gets interrupted. When that gets interrupted, you can only kind of figure out what can happen, right? So that is why eclipses, the ancients would say it feels like the end of the world, because literally entire Earth's electromagnetic field would actually rotate or vibrate in a way backwards or in a disharmony. That's why sometimes they say there's some earthquakes that can happen during these times and all these other things that could happen. All right, so now what I want to just do is show you the chart. We're going to draw on it and we're kind of going to just kind of figure out what's happening. So here you can see we have let me get my drawing up. We have right here, we have the node, the sun and the moon conjunct. Think you're going to be able to see the eclipse way up north. They say like in Greenland, Canada, Russia, like way up north. But you can see a new moon, see conjunct. You see 27 degrees, Taurus. All right. That's what we're looking at. Mercury is involved. Mercury is at 28 degrees in Taurus. Okay. And this is a true sidereal chart. So what I can do is I'll show you a night sky chart as well. We can look at it. But I'm going to just stick with this for a little bit. All right. So this is going on in Taurus. This is part of a T-square going on with Neptune and the nodes. And it also has a bit of a split hitting the galactic center. See that? Kind of goes like this. Right? So that's T-square. T-squares mean lessons. So lessons we're dealing with of possible visions or confusion of messages, because when Mercury and Neptune hit each other, Mercury is retrograde, by the way, right? And Neptune is really in Pisces. That's the natural ruler. So when we get Mercury retrograde hitting Neptune, those two together can create channeling. Normally they create channeling messages, spiritual messages, because Neptune is connected to the great abyss and Mercury is the messenger of the gods. So when Mercury is retrograde, kind of, again, it's a little bit, could create a slight disruption of the way you receive messages. But sometimes you can actually see the future because the messenger is running backwards and the planetary influences are coming in without the filter of Mercury. So it's possible you can receive like strong intuitive hits. That's something that could rise up. And if you look at the symbol of retrograde, it looks like this, which is also a medicinal prescription symbol. So we're dealing with some kind of cosmic medicine that's going to be coming our way during this eclipse. And remember, that's blocking out the energy. So now you're dealing with the planetary influences without the solar lunar normal movement. So that's something to pay attention to. So there could be hard information or information that you necessarily don't want to hear or kind of can come through that could be confusing for you. And just know that that's a glimpse of possibilities. So that's something that might make sense to pay attention to during this time. So, all right. So that's that T-square. Now I'm going to erase this because I'm going to draw a lot, and I don't want to confuse, a lot because it could be confusing. All right. So a good thing is when you know these planetary influences, when you have a solar lunar kind of blockage, an eclipse, you would want to focus on these planetary influences, which is why I'm focusing more on the planetary influences, because that's the energy you want to work with during an eclipse, because it could be a little freaky, right? So one of the other things that super important, this is all year, is this square between Saturn and Capricorn. Saturn is retrograde as well, and Uranus in Aries. And trust me, this is how it is in the sky. You look in the sky, you go to any sky app, this is the placements. Tropical astrology is telling you Uranus is in Taurus. Not true. It's also saying Saturn is in Aquarius. Not true. Okay, so any sky app, Skywalk, iPhone app, put it up in the sky, look where Saturn is. It's in the constellation of Capricorn, which is its natural ruler. And it's square on Uranus. Uranus is, these two planets are the opposite energies, which is why I'm pointing this out. Saturn is about control, restrictions. In Greek mythology, Saturn is Chronos. Chronos is time, right? Chronological order, chronos, chronometer, right? Phone, watch. Everything with time, chronos, time, limits, structure. That's Saturn, right? And even the mythology, the Greek mythology is Saturn with the sickle, chops the testicles off of Uranus because Uranus is eating his children. So that's another rabbit hole you can go down. Uranus, Chronos, Saturn. So Saturn is castration, right? And Uranus is freedom, liberation, awakening, new ideas, new system, new order, new way. And it's in Aries, the beginning of the zodiac, starting fresh. So they're square. So that literally is what's going on in the world right now. We're literally, lockdown, wear a mask, do this, do that, obey authority, all of this stuff. And then that's Saturn. Uranus is don't obey, don't lock down, don't wear a mask, don't do the, like, this is a free new, world, right? So literally it's the difference of the Great Reset, right, which is Saturn, or the Great Awakening, which is Uranus. So those two, this is what's going on. This is why our world is dealing with what we're dealing with right now. They're square, challenging each other. All right. So that is going on all year. So during all these eclipses and all this stuff, that energy is there. Right. So you can focus on that as well. Another energy I want to point out, this was going on during the lunar eclipse in Scorpio, and it's still happening during the solar eclipse, is you have this opposition. Pluto retrograde in Sag, Mars in Cancer. They're opposing each other. These two planets together create the ultimate warrior of complete annihilation. So that could be a good thing if you want to get rid of something that you just couldn't cut the cords with. Can't cut it. These two create the ultimate war. Why? Because Pluto is the ultimate shadow worker. It's the ultimate shaman that goes into the deep dark realms, the deep abyss, and it's sextiles with Neptune. See, there's a sextile there. So there's something going on with, and these two together, Neptune and Pluto, create the shaman. And Neptune, draw here. Neptune is also trine on the Mars. So there's a connection there. It's not a grand trine, but you can see there's something kind of going on right here with like, what is the vision? What are we seeing? What needs to go? And the reason why is because Pluto is about resurrection. It's actually the ruler, let me get my drawing, of Scorpio, which the last eclipse, the lunar eclipse, was in Scorpio. So this is what we're dealing with. Okay, so this is the final completion of kind of annihilating something so that it could resurrect into something new, so it could be reborn, phoenix rising. That's the whole idea of Pluto. So now, that being said, if you look into some Egyptian cosmology, I'm going to read from this book that I love, because I noticed that Mars is in Cancer. So this is breakthrough action of a rebirth, of a cosmic rebirth. So this is a great book that I go to a lot. It's called Celestial Ship of the North. And let's see here, where I was reading this earlier and I was like, okay, I definitely want to read this to our people. Okay. The scarab or beetle was held very sacred and seemingly born of itself and from itself, was given the title of the only begotten. In the month of June, or Mesor, at the rising of the river Nile, this creature rolls its egg into a little ball, which it stows away to await birth. Mesor means also rebirth and was the name given to the zodiacal sign of Cancer, which marked the month of transformation, rebirth, and a new beginning. A lunar symbol was created from the beetle or scarab, as it was said to deposit its seed and then leave it for 28 days, typical of the mystical moon of nature. And on the 29th day, the little seed ball opened and life was renewed. On this day, the moon came into conjunction of the sun. And this is what we're looking at here, conjunction of the sun. It's a new moon. Conjunction, and then reappeared, resurrected into a new life. So the beetle below transformed into a new life, just as the moon above, coming to conjunction of the sun in the chart of a native, was said mystically to give rebirth to the Christos within. The Christos within is what caught my attention, because that is Christ consciousness. The Christos energy is what we deal with the 13 zodiac sign of Ophiuchus. It's called the anointed one, the resurrection, the one who knows the art of resurrection, the Christos. So this like really struck me when I was reading this earlier today. And Mars is there opposing Pluto. So this could lead to a great transformation of something that needs to happen. Okay. So also, right? So that's something that's something really we should sit with. That's a powerful energy. Yeah, that's a really powerful one. Now, also there's something interesting that I was looking at earlier too. I always like to look at what Venus is doing and Mars is doing. And Venus is square on Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer, teacher. Venus is the divine feminine energy, Sophia. So when you see Chiron and Venus hit, or Chiron and Mars hit, it's usually wounded feminine warrior. When it's hitting Mars, it's usually wounded masculine warrior. That kind of energy comes up and needs to be dealt with. So during this eclipse, we could have some feminine kind of wounds coming up. So it could be a good idea to go into some kind of feminine sacred ceremony and kind of work with that energy of what can come up, and like honor that and be responsible with that. All that stuff can come up. And let's see, I want to just go back here. I took some notes earlier. Oh yes, okay. That was the one thing. Okay, let's go back here. That's funny. I put Mercury in Gatorade because that's a joke because it's retrograde. But Saturn has a trine to all this stuff going on in the eclipse. So earlier, December 21st. Remember we had the whole Great Conjunction. That was when these two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, were conjunct. So also Saturn is the great teacher. This is why it's the ruler of time. It knows the right timing on everything. So the fact that it's trining on the sun and the moon and Mercury, that could be somewhat good. That could be like, okay, what's the right time to do all of this? Right? Because at the end, Saturn just wants you to do the right thing on Earth. It controls three-dimensional reality of time, space on Earth. And that's why you want to get along with Saturn, even though Saturn can seem like the authority figure. So, all right. So I think that was all we got. Let me just see my notes because I can go on forever. Yeah, I think that was it. So, yeah, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I also do these eclipse charts for a person. So what I do is I overlay this chart on top of your natal chart, and I can tell you how these energies are going to affect you directly, personally. So those are, I'm doing like for the full year eclipse readings. So you can see what to expect um, every eclipse. You can kind of look to see what's going on for yourself personally. So you can reach out to me about that. I might put a link in whatever platform this is going to be on. And yeah, so let me know if you have any questions. This is true sidereal astrology, true alignment with the constellations in the sky. So I hope I didn't confuse you. But if you're going to study astrology, why not connect to the actual constellations in the sky? That's the whole purpose of astrology, right? The study of the stars, stars, ology, the study. Yeah. So let me stop sharing and let me say goodbye. So, all right. Happy eclipse, June 10th. I'll see you on the other side. Okay, bye.